Hey, the better rifle. Drop the gun! Oh, shit! I'm hit. I'm okay. But I'm not gonna die.
Welcome to Badges, Bullets, and Blunders, the show that tells funny cop stories from real people who live them. I'm your host, Travis Harless. Before we get started, if you'd like to support this podcast, head over to our friends at Slick Sleeve Syndicate. The link will be in the description. Today's guest is my friend John. John was a retired detective from a police department in California. John, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? What did you do before you became a cop? How long were you a cop? And what were some of the assignments you worked when you used to be a police officer?
Well, I served 6 years in the United States Marine Corps. Last few years out here, I ended up on recruiting duty, and after that, my whole life wanted to be a police officer. So I primarily went in the Marines to keep myself out of trouble, and I knew that they would hire former Marines or former service guys. It was big back in those days.
What did you do in the Marine Corps?
I was actually on recruiting duty at the end. I had an MOS of 1391, which was bulk petroleum, which basically I did fuel bladders and type things. So, nothing exciting.
Yeah.
There was no war going on. I was in there from 86 to 91, and just as I was getting out, Desert Storm took off, but it was over within 100 hours. So,
Yeah.
kind of the way they should handle things now. But after the Marine Corps, I got out of the Marine Corps in May of 92. August of 92, I was in the police academy. Graduated that. I was with the police department for 25 years. During that time, had about 10 years on patrol. 5 years of that was with the SEU, Special Enforcement Unit, gang unit.
Yep.
After that, I promoted to detective. Worked a few different areas in the detective division. One of which was I did about 5.5 years at the undercover vice officer, dealing with all the things that vice does. After that, I came back to the investigations division, but during that time I also served 15 years on the police department SWAT team. 6 of those were as on the entry side, and then the last 9 were with the sniper element. So it was a great career, wouldn't change it. Did exactly what I wanted. Once I made detective, I stopped taking tests. I had things going on the outside of my life that I was rodeoing and having fun, and the kids were rodeoing and plus playing 3 sports, so I just decided to stay a detective and enjoy life a little bit.
Okay. Rodeoing. We have a story about that. So what have you been doing? When did you retire?
I retired October of 2018, so it's almost 6.5 years now.
Okay. What have you been doing since then?
Since then, I've been doing a lot of work on the ranches and buying and selling cattle, team roping, chasing cows and roping them. Still competing, going over to Vegas and some of the other places. Just keep myself busy,
Well, yeah. And speaking of, you talk about cowboying and rodeoing and roping. You have a unique skill set that not a lot of police officers have when it comes to cowboy skills. And those came into play on a very unique type of call. You want to tell us about the time that you had to use your cowboy roping skills in the line of duty?
Yeah, it's a great story. This was about 2016 summertime. I'm up in the detectives division, and I get a phone call from my supervisor. And he says, we got this guy in the canal with a knife, and we can't get him out of a Lake Street Canal, which is about 30 feet wide and about 4.5 feet deep. He says, can you come out here and rope him? The supervisor knew that I was a team roper and branded and, worked the ranches. And my first question to him was, what color is this guy? Because if he's black, I am not roping any black guy. There are just way too many,
Some bad optics.
Bad optics, yeah, And he goes, no. He's Hispanic. It's okay.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, that's fine. I'll bring out the rope. But I had another follow-up question to him. I said, hey, how high up the chain does this go? I'm hoping this goes above you. And he goes, there's a lieutenant and a captain out here, and they told me to give you a call when I ran it by him. I said, oh, that's great. I said, no problem. I'm okay with that. He says, we got like 20 or 30 cops on each side of this canal. We can't get this guy out.
Yeah.
And he's got like a 9-inch blade in his hand. And I don't recall exactly what the initial offense was, but he had ran from the police officers with this knife in his hand. And he told me that this guy appeared to be just cranked out of his mind.
Yeah.
Little guy, probably 130 pounds and probably like 5'4" or something. And I said, yeah, I'm on my way. So anyway, I show up out there to the canal, and sure enough, here's this guy in the middle of the canal holding his knife, just above the water line, and just a little bit of his shoulders, and
So it's kind of a unique problem for a patrol officer to deal with. 'Cause,
Yeah,
like, what tool do you have to get a guy who's armed out of a canal?
yeah, you go in water and it slows your movements. You don't really have any, and
Can't send the dog because he's going to stab the dog or drown it.
yeah, or an officer,
Or an officer,
and you can't tase them because they're in the water.
Yeah.
And they had been out there for an hour and a half, 2 hours at this point,
Trying to figure out how to get him out of there.
And I actually thought it was a really viable idea, and it's because it's something easy for me to do. I can rope him no problem.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I get the rope out, and sure enough, he sees me swinging it, and I throw the rope, and he goes under the water, and the current kind of takes it down. I said, okay, I can time that.
Yeah.
So I just ended up timing it and throwing it out in front of him, and when he went underwater, I waited for him to come up, and then I just snatched him up with it.
So he came up inside the loop.
Into the loop, and it ended up catching him around just the neck. And I told the guys, there were some younger cops on the banks. I said, look, this can be just like branding a calf.
Yeah.
I'm going to rope him, and then I'm going to grab the rope, and then I'm going to move on away from him. You guys get short on the rope and just pull him. Well, the banks of the
Canal.
yeah, they were like, I don't know, 50 degrees, know.
Yeah, they're pretty steep.
Yeah, they're pretty steep. And I told the guys, I said, look, if you get him to the bank and he has not dropped the knife, which I assumed as soon as he got roped, he'd grab the rope because there's pressure on you. And I said, do not pull him on shore because then we got a whole different set of issues.
Yeah.
And so anyway, he sure enough just grabbed the rope, and he just basically water skied across the water, and then he hit the bank, stuck for a second, and then they pulled him up, and then they just got on top of him, put the handcuffs on him. Unique thing is I still have that rope. I kept it as a memento, and it's funny because I've run into new cops, here and there, and they'll say, "Oh, you're the guy that roped the guy out of the canal," and I'd never met these guys before. They were
I've heard that story.
Yeah, you
before
know the
I met
story,
you.
right? Yeah,
Yeah, that's funny.
yeah, but it was. It probably saved the guy's life, to be honest with you, and I think a tactical rope of something like that could make all kinds of difference.
Yeah. Well, in the war, they always stress in this de-escalation policies, and it's like, how do you get a guy who's refusing to come out of the canal, who's armed with a knife, to come out? And it's hard to think of a better tactic, and obviously it worked.
I'm sure it was a little painful. I'm sure it was or highly uncomfortable. For him, but it's better than getting shot.
Oh yeah,
100%.
Like you said, probably saved his life.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was a really good call by the guys above me to even think about that. So
it was a good tactic.
Yeah.
Never before and never since has it been.
Not that I've ever heard of.
Well, I don't think we have anyone that's got that particular skill set that could come out and help us with that. So very unique. Was a square peg, square hole kind of scenario.
Yeah. Specifics.
Yeah, so you've been a lot of places, done a lot of things in police work. You did a search warrant for a body cavity search.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. What is what is that?
Well, so basically, a body cavity search warrant is a warrant that you write to have somebody taken to the hospital and by medical means, search the inside of their body.
Yeah.
So the incidents that came about this was probably about 2005. Me and my partner, Ryan.
This is back when narcotics in California were illegal.
Yeah.
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 So people were more motivated to hide them.
Oh, in every which way you can imagine.
Yeah.
And so it was about 2005, me and my partner Ryan were rolling the gang part of town, and that was where we were assigned. We were the gang unit, and we stopped this car for a motor vehicle violation, and the car kind of slowly rolls us a little bit, which is not uncommon. Somebody, trying to hide dope, or trying to get to a house of a friend or a family or whatever, so they think for whatever reason we're not going to tow their car if they get to their house. Anyway, I walk up and I instantly recognize him as somebody that I've dealt with him and his family as gang members over the years. And this guy's about 20 at the time. And anyway, so I know he's on parole or probation. I don't recall exactly at the point. But anyway, we get to the point where I'm actually searching him outside the car. And between the cheeks of his ass, which is a common place for them to, hide some dope, I feel that's about a 1-inch round with a knot on it. It feels just like a baggie, like we've seen 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And as soon as I feel that, he goes to resist. Well, anyway, I take him down. We get him in handcuffs.
He bucks on you?
Say again?
You say he bucks on you?
I can't.
He said he bucks on you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, he bucked on us a little bit, and we just took him down and put the handcuffs on him. No real anything. He just wanted us away from his ass where he had the dope.
Yeah.
But as you guys know, in these areas, as soon as they start screaming, "Mama," or this is what he was screaming, "Mama, they're after me, they're getting me," or whatever he's screaming, "Mama, Mama," and his house was literally right there, so he'd rolled up by his house.
Yeah,
he knew he was rolling dirty, and anyway, so everybody comes out, and so we got people all the way around just screaming at us, saying, "Don't do this, don't do that," all the stuff that happens. Well, we had to put him in a patrol car pretty quick, and of course we'd called for backup, and then everybody gets there. Because there was only 2 of us, we just needed to get him, locked down. And so once the other units get there and everything, get it done, we get the car dealt with, and then we take him off to jail. I'm just going to take him. But I see him in the back of the seat during this time, and he's got his hands behind him, and he's trying to, move around in the car. And it looks like they got him down the back of his pants. But, with all these people, there's not much I can do about it at the time. He's not going to conceal it anywhere in the car. There's only a couple places that he could put it, and one would be his mouth and the other would be his ass.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't find it. So we take him to the jail, and we do a strip search of him there at the jail, and it's not there. Well, it was obvious that he had taken his finger and shoved it up his ass. I knew what I'd felt. I'd searched the car 2 or 3 times. It just was obvious to me that that's what had happened. So I called my boss, and I run the story down to him, and he goes, "Are you sure?" I said, "I'm absolutely positive of what I felt, of what it was, and it's not there anymore." And his hands were down his pants, and he said, "Okay." So I wrote a body cavity search warrant, which allows me to take him to a medical facility like medical center, and then the doctor, using whatever means medically approved by him to remove the object safely, can be done. So I write this body cavity search warrant, and I call our communications center to find out who the on-call judge is. And just out of chance, you couldn't write this in a script, his name is Judge Pfister. And I thought, oh my God. And so anyway, we go over and we meet Judge Pfister.
He's going to sign this one for sure.
Up. And he reads through the search warrant. He's kind of nodding. Yeah, he's going through it. And once he finishes it, he signs it and he hands it to me. Swears, over the warrant. And I said, yeah. And he asked me a couple questions. I don't remember what they were, but how sure I was or whatever. And I told him, and he says okay, and he signs it, and he says happy hunting. He hands me the warrant. I remember him saying that. And so me and Ryan went back and got the guy and took him to. He was being held at the station, I believe, at that point, and took him up to KMC, where I met he's become a friend now. He was a doctor. His first name was Ron, and we ended up becoming good friends after this incident. But I talked to Dr. Ron, and I said, "Hey, this is the circumstances, And he says, "I got this." He goes, "My dad was a police officer down in the LA area," and he says, "Man," he says, "I always wanted to be a cop." He says, "I'm with you guys. If this is what you think is there, I'll use the method that I seem best to do it." I said, "Perfect." So here's this tough guy gangster laying on his side on a gurney with his pants pulled down, and Dr. Ron gloves up and lubes up real good with his fingers, and he goes to stick him in there, and the guy squeezes down, and he pulls back out, and he says, "Do not do that." And because I guess he told me how strong the sphincter muscles were, and that it was actually painful. He says, "Don't do that again." And so anyway, he reaches in there, and he says, "I can feel it."
Yeah.
Of course, at that point, I'm like, "Oh God, thank you."
Yeah.
I was positive that's where it had to be.
Yeah.
And anyway, so he pulls out exactly what I had described in the search warrant. About 3/4 of an inch to an inch round, with kind of oblong a little bit, with a little knot tied on the top of it.
Yeah.
And I was so relieved. Of course, this guy, he's just, as he pulls it out of his butt, he's just like, "Oh, I'm screwed."
Yeah.
Well, he
You
takes
say it wasn't his?
Yeah,
It's not mine.
this wasn't my butthole. Yeah. So anyway, this guy takes it to court, which I wish he, for his sake, he would have done. I mean, what are you going to say? It wasn't mine.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was there.
It's not my butthole.
I was asleep. Whatever. So he takes it to court, and so there's his friends and family sitting in the courtroom, and I have to describe what they did to him. And he just puts his head down, and I felt bad for the guy, but I mean, hey, you're the one who brought it to court.
Yeah.
You could have just went away. But anyway, that was just that was a one-off for me in my career.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique one.
Yeah. And Judge Pfister.
Judge Pfister.
I had to let him know what the results were.
Yeah, so you also worked, you spent a lot of time, you mentioned, in Vice Narcotics, and that comes with certain type of enforcement. Tell us what is Vice?
So, Vice, we deal with crimes of the community. Lured in for the purpose of prostitution. We license massage places, strip joints, things like that. It's kind of the morale police, the moral police of the police department.
The theaters too, right?
And the theaters as well. But we also did a lot of dope stuff. I bought a lot of dope while I was undercover. We worked hand in hand with the DEA and also our narcotics unit. So we were all basically one, but, we did separate things on occasions. Yeah. But so I had this one boss, great boss to work for, great guy to work for, Wally. And, Wally was kind of a germaphobe. Not kind of, he was. And,
not a good thing to be when you're dealing with street
nasty
walking
people. Yeah. But fortunately he was a sergeant, so he didn't really have to deal with them too much. He just had to maybe talk to them. Yeah. And, I had a ponytail at one point, and then I also had in my truck a mullet wig and a cowboy hat. I had a hard hat. I had I had a whole bunch of stuff,
props.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, while I was in the unit, we had over 2,000 arrests that I've either done or been involved with my partners, which included the main drags or actually getting a motel room and calling them in from Craigslist. So we were pretty busy. But anyway, so over the 5.5 years I was in there, it was common to go out at nighttime and pick these people up, these prostitutes. So I don't recall exactly why Wally was in my truck that night, whether his car was down or whatever. But, his car is so clean, you literally could drop stuff on his floor mat and probably just eat it where it lays. I mean, it's that clean. And, he's always dressed nice, and just a great guy. And So anyway, he's riding along with me in my truck, which has had hundreds of prostitutes sit in the seats that he's in. I didn't tell him, but I mean, he should have known that. But anyway, so it was a white Ford F-150, and I see a gal that I recalled that I had arrested 4 or 5 times. But these gals are they're so off, they don't even care. They're thinking about making the bucks. And anyway, it's summertime, and she's wearing a pair of shorts that makes Daisy Dukes look like long legs. And I mean, there is no question, it's just crazy. But anyway, so I see her, I call her by name. I'll call her Sue for this story here. I said, "Hey, Sue, you're looking good, baby." And anyway, so she comes over to the car. Doesn't even think it's me, just thinks it's one of her old
regulars. Yeah.
She comes over the car, and Wally's got gray hair, and he looks older than me. Maybe not that older than me, but he looks older than me, and he is older than me. And I said, "Hey," "my dad's getting married tomorrow. I'd like to get him a blowjob." And Wally's pissed, son of a bitch. And I said, "No," I just. He could use one, And I said, "Hey," I said, "How much?" And she goes, $50. I go, "That's a great deal. You're looking good, girl." And so I said, "Get in the truck." He's like, "Son of a bitch."
Yeah.
She gets in the truck sitting between us.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I'm like, "Baby, you looking fine." I said, I might want one myself. I said, "How much?" She goes, $100. I said, "Shit. Count me in."
Double it up.
Yeah, hell yeah. I said, "Dad," I said,
a 2-for-1 discount.
Yeah. I said, "You're gonna like this." I said, "My dad's hung like an elephant, so you might have negotiated a little higher." She goes, "Really?" She starts grabbing for his dick, and Wally has grabbed a hold of this door and literally become part of the door, trying to get away from her, and block her while she's trying to grab his pecker. Anyway, I'm just on the verge of losing it the whole time. And anyway, so we drive down the street and pull into this parking lot. And I said, "Hey, Sue, it's me. You're under arrest." And she just wasn't sure. I said, "Yeah." And whatever I was wearing or whatever, I took it off. I said, "You're under arrest." I said, "I'm just going to write you a ticket as long as you're this, that, and the other." And of course, he got out of the truck as soon as it stopped. It may not even have stopped. But I was pulling in there.
Then you build up.
Anyway, she was a good sport about it. I wrote her ticket, sent her down the way. But she was, they're all dirty out there. They all have that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can think of maybe 2 out of the 2,000 that I've seen or been in contact with, that if somebody was single, one of my friends would actually go, let's go have a drink. It's just, it's not too healthy. So
not a good lifestyle.
No, not at all.
No. Speaking of vice, you had another prostitute sting where you used a different tactic.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
For Princess. Yeah. So, so, we always went out. You never went out by yourself to do these things. You always had, a couple guys with you. And we out on the drag, there was this new one, and nobody could get her. And so I looked at my partners. I said, "Well, I'm going to go and pretend to be deaf and see if I can get her." "Oh, you won't get her. You won't get her. You won't get her." And there was a tape recorder. I actually had a tape recording of this at one time. I can't find it now, but my partners recorded it. And so she's at this like little mini mart on the corner of the drag, and she's out there walking her stuff back and forth by the ice machine, just looking not so good. Yeah. But she thought she was looking good.
Yeah.
She was probably 6'2", 40, and wearing clothes for somebody a tenth of her size.
Mm-hmm.
And
thick.
Yeah. So
2 C's.
Yummy.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And so anyway, I roll up and roll down my window, and she comes to my window and she starts talking. And I said, "You have to look at me when you talk. I can't, I read lips. I'm deaf."
Yeah.
And she looks at me. I said, do you tuck wiener? And she just kind of dumbfounded. And I said, look, I work at Quarto 3 at Pepsi. I only got an hour. I need a wiener tuck.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I said, what's your name? And she says, Princess. I go, no. You look at me when you talk. I can't. You turn away. You know, and of course she says, Princess.
Just laying it on thick.
And I had a notepad right there, and I said, I don't understand. You write your name down. And I let her write the name down. And so it was kind of funny. So she gets in the truck with me after about 2 minutes of just playing this, trying to determine, what's going on.
Yeah.
She gets in the truck with me, and my two partners are literally across the parking lot facing me like 40 yards away, laughing their asses off.
Yeah.
And I am just, it's up to the point where I don't know how I held it together. And so anyway, I asked her, I said, well, how much you tuck my wiener pole? And she says 40. I said, no, you write it down. And which I ultimately booked this as evidence, and she wrote down, $40 or whatever it was. And, I hurry up. I only got 1 hour for lunch. Pepsi, and so, which Pepsi is just around the corner and down the block.
Oh, shit.
And I said, you tuck good winner? And I'm going off, and I'm watching, catching these guys just laughing their ass off, And, of course, I'm playing the role, but I'm trying to make them laugh at the same time. And anyway, so she's like, it goes on and on and on and on. And so she writes down how much, what she's going to do, writes her name down and, everything. And so after all this, and this, like I said, this is about a 10-minute process. Yeah. And so anyway, what do you want dough? You want to talk my window? And so she says, well, go out this way. And, she looked away. I said, no, you look at me when you talk. I had her all flustered. So she's, you go pull out here, you go that way. So I knew where I was going to take her.
Yeah.
And anyway, so we pulled out on the street, and we kind of have normal places where we take them and stuff. But I'm just driving along, all happy.
Yeah.
And she goes, go left. And I just act like I didn't hear her.
Yeah.
Just kept going. I took her to where I want to go. And finally I said, hey, I'm a police officer. You're under arrest. And she had this craziest look on her face, like she couldn't believe.
Yeah. Dumbfounded.
What, you're not deaf?
So, like, they hired deaf cops?
Yeah. I said, this is my partner pulling up behind us. Just sit there and we're going to probably write you a ticket, if there's nothing else.
Yeah.
But, oh my gosh, it went on for 10, 15 minutes from the time I contacted to the rest. And there was a lot of stuff in between, but I must have told her 10 times to look at me. I'd read your lips, Yeah. And anyway, I ended up getting her. That was a pretty good one.
That's funny. You can't make those up. So talk to us about a time when you had a burglary suspect and had a little accident.
Oh, yeah. So there for a while, when I was up in the detectives division, we were having just crazy numbers of door kicks. And there was just crews all over town, especially out in the Southwest, that were just kicking doors like crazy and going in and getting stuff. So I had information on who they were through a source and some other stuff. So we actually put the plane up and had a bunch of undercover cars. And we decided that they were doing early morning stuff, like right after people went to work.
Yeah.
So we had the plane up and watching somebody on the street. And when that car backed out, sure, he went and picked up another guy, just like he normally did, and then went off into a little neighborhood and was just doing laps. Well, there was probably 8 or 10 cars out there at the time, plus the airplane. And sometimes they just double back or whatever. They just do drive, wherever. So I was off the main drag one street, and they were on the other side of the main drag going through a residential. Well, they crossed over real quick and then came right down the street that I was on, that I was actually parked on, listening to the radio in case they rolled out. Well, they stop at the house behind me. I mean, literally right behind me. I'm parked in one house, and they park right there. And one guy gets out, and he walks over and looks to the gate. Now, I'm putting this out on the radio. He looks over the gate, and he comes back to the house. back to his truck or the car, and tells his buddy. Well, they end up getting out of the car, and they both go into the backyard. Now, I don't know if there's somebody home. It could be a mom, it could be a daughter, it could be a little kid. I don't know who's in there. And one of the guys is saying, "Hey, wait till we all get there." Well, I can only wait so long.
Yeah.
If they're going to kick in that door and then they get in there, it could be a hostage situation or whatever. So I said, "To hell with it." And I went through the gate, went down the side of the house, and as I come around the edge of the deal, one of them sees me, and they're trying to break into the back door.
Yeah.
Well, they take off running, and then they go down the other side, which is only about 6 feet wide from the fence to the house. And I'm just full-blown coming and acknowledging who I am in the whole 9 yards. And one of them jumped up on the fence, and one was going to the end of the fence, and he was going to jump that. As I went by, I kind of knocked that guy off the fence because I just wanted to slow him down until some more guys got there. And then the other guy got to the fence and heard me coming. He turned, and I just, when you're chasing somebody like this, you can hit him like a NFL linebacker. You've got extra strength. Well, I hit him right in the center of his body and blew him through the fence in between both the 2x4s, shattered the fence. And when we hit the ground and I get him into custody, I look up and there's like three of my partners standing around going, "Well, that was cool." Yeah. They said, "We're just standing there, also the fence just exploded." Yeah. And anyway, so we get him in custody, and he wasn't rude or anything at that point. He just, there was no need to disrespect him or anything, and chew on him, and we ended up getting the other guy too. He just ultimately was taken right there in the yard next door. Yeah. And so I'm talking to this guy, and he's got this, I stand him up, and he's got this really bad look on his face. And almost like he's sick. I asked him, I said, "You okay?" He says, "I shit myself." So I guess, the old saying, "knock the shit out of you," does apply, which I know you've seen a time or two in the career. But
yeah.
He says, "I shit myself." I said, "Well, okay, well, sit down here." I said, "You're not going in my car. We'll wait till a patrol car gets here." And so anyway.
They got the plastic seats.
Yeah.
So it works out.
So the patrolman that had to come get him wasn't too happy, but, it was a shitty situation.
Yeah. That excitement of committing a burglary and combined with an open field tackle.
And needing to take a shit.
Yeah. That's why you got a pregame, man. You gotta take your pregame dump.
Oh yeah,
pregame. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah.
And morning Constitution.
Rookie move.
Rookie move.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always go prepared.
All right. Tell us about somebody flipping the bird.
Okay, that was about 2005. Me and my partner Mark at the time. Mark's about 6'6", about probably 230 at the time, and I'm not 6'6" and 230.
No.
And thank you. And anyway, if I'd been 6'6", I would have took out one of those 2x4s on that fence. Yeah. So anyway, so we're over in the Southgate area, and it's we're just rolling around, and this guy goes through a stop sign or something. It was a traffic violation. I don't remember specifically what it was, but nothing major. And we pulled him over. He's probably 55, 60 years old, and just asshole, And I was like, well, there's no need to be like that, Yeah. Anyway, gave him a warning on that and sent him on down the road. Well, he comes up to a T intersection on a main drag, and he's traveling northbound in this main drag. It's 2 lanes in both directions. It's a Sunday afternoon at like 2:00, and there's people everywhere. There's a park in the area. There's people just got out of church and got done eating, and it's pretty busy traffic at the time. And so he pulls up to the stop sign, and we pull up behind him. We all left at the same time, and he sticks his arm out his left arm out the driver's window in like an L shape.
Like he's turning left.
Yeah, and at the same time, he's got his middle finger on it, but it's a perfect square, and he's flipping us off, but he's also signaling,
That he's
to make a
turning left.
right-hand turn.
Yeah.
And then he makes a left-hand turn, which in that circumstance could have been extremely dangerous due to the amount of traffic, the pedestrian traffic, as well as the other traffic on the street. So my partner Mark and I decided we needed to stop him and write him a citation for that. And so we stopped him. And, of course, he's kind of an asshole still.
Yeah.
And anyway, I got his driver's license and wrote him a citation for, I don't remember what the CVC section is, but there's a CVC section for improper signaling.
Improper signaling, yeah.
Yeah. And
that's great because it's left.
it took me a minute
right
to find it.
and stop.
Yeah, exactly.
So up at an L shape would be turning right.
Yeah, and he turned left.
Yeah. That's unsafe.
And which could be confusing for people, on bicycles or whatever, and then you just pull out in front of them. So anyway, I cited him, and he's cussing us, and of course I'm extremely professional at the time.
Yeah.
And anyway, cited him, and he takes it to court, to traffic court. So about 6 weeks to 8 weeks later, I get called to court on this deal, and the bailiff in the court, all the cops sit in the back, and the bailiff comes up to me. He says, he's about 50 years old. He says, hey, you're here for so-and-so. And I said, yeah. He goes, well, that's my cousin. He's an asshole. In fact, he'd been arrested for resisting arrest. I think he said like 10 times. Yeah. I didn't have any knowledge of that. And I said, well, it doesn't surprise me, to be honest with you. And anyway, so they call me up on the stand, and the judge officer tells us what happened. I explained it was a Sunday and a lot of traffic, pedestrians, bikes, cars. And Mr. So-and-so extended his arm out the window in an L shape with his hand up in a 90-degree angle, citing for a right-hand turn, and then continued on to make a left-hand turn, which could be dangerous and be confusing to the other people on the roadway. And he said, okay, and explained how dangerous it was at the time and, and conditions. And judge said, okay. And anyway, so he asked Mr. Jones, we'll say, I don't remember his last name. Mr. Jones, can you tell me what happened? And he says, yes, Your Honor. He says, I wasn't signaling, I was flipping him off. And the judge says, okay. He says, do you have any questions for the officer or anything? No. I wasn't signaling, though. I just flipping him off. And he says, okay. He says, you have anything else to add? No. I was just flipping him off, Your Honor. Okay. And he mad dogged me the whole way out of the courtroom. And I think I got a standing ovation from the police officers in the back. But I at least got some thumbs up. But it was kind of the one-off.
Some other kind of hand signals.
Yeah. Now, if this had been 3:00 in the morning and there was no traffic or anything, would it have been that big a deal? No, not really. It was the conditions.
Of the day. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. Some memorable ones.
Mm-hmm. All right. You had another thing that involving a body dump. What is that?
Well, police officers are inherently mischievous. They want to play jokes on their buddies and
on each other.
Sometimes it gets late at night, and then you get bored, and you want to have some fun with your friends. Good, safe, clean fun. And of
course.
So this was back in probably 93, and there was, on the east side midnights there'd be 3 of us on one side of town. Mm-hmm. From 3:00 in the morning till 9 in the morning, and so we all knew each other's voices. You could tell by their voice whether something was wrong. Or, when they code off, you start heading that way. We didn't have that many officers, so we just, you knew who you worked with. And probably on the whole city, there would have been, on the midnight shifts after 3:00 in the morning, there could be anywhere from 4 people to 8 people, depending on who was taking the day off or whatever. And this was generally weekends. So there was this one guy, his nickname was Smokey. Mm-hmm. And, Smokey was a very casual guy, excellent cop, excellent instincts. kind of the guy that every now and then he'd start singing those like jazz blues songs and start snapping his fingers, and he'd start off with some crooning deal, and he'd just be smooth, and everybody liked Smokey, and so anyway, and he wasn't somebody to get on the radio and scream or act nervous whatsoever. And so one night I'm leaving the hospital ER room with one of our King units and one of our
Canines.
Canine units, yeah. And I think it was just 4 or 5 of us that were on the east side that night. And anyway, it was late. And we hear him come on with his call sign, Smokey. He calls the King unit, says, hey, he says, can you meet me over here in the North Alley, blah, 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 19th Street, and I can you meet me here? And he's nervous, I can tell it, and so I just see Joe, who's the Canine unit, take off. And, of course, I went with him, thinking, what the hell's going on,
Yeah.
And so we pull around, and we pull into the alley, and here's Smokey sitting on the curb with his head between his knees, with his hands, and he's rocking.
Yeah.
What the hell's going on? I only been on like a year, maybe at the time, and I'm thinking, Smokey's a cool cat, and so Joe pulls up, turns his lights off out, and I pull up, turn my lights up, but before he turns his lights out, I can see a body underneath the police car.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, oh my God. And so I get out, and Smokey's sitting on the curb, and he says, I didn't see him. Oh, I just didn't see him. He was just laying there. And I said, Smokey, it's going to be fine. We're going to just take care of it. So Joe's already on his way to check the body, which is underneath, behind the front wheel.
Yeah.
Under the passenger cab. And it's just like from the hips down.
Yeah.
And so we kind of walk up there in the darkness. Oh, shit. Smokey goes, he's dead. And I'm thinking, oh, shit. So anyway, I go back over to Smokey. I said, it's going to be okay. He goes, can we just throw him in the dumpster? And I thought, oh, shit. I said, I'm never going to make this. And I said, no, but we'll think of something. I said, he's dead. And, this all happened within like a couple seconds. We're just about to call medical aid and all kinds of stuff, and me and Joe realize it's a mannequin.
Yeah.
And it's a dark alley.
Yeah.
Well, it was just, I just thought my career was over. Yeah. And, but when Smokey, like I said, did that, it was great. So then we devised a plan to go to the Beale Bridge and call the sergeant over to meet one of us under the bridge, and then we were going to take the dummy and throw him off the bridge and scream, but we couldn't. The sergeant was tied up, so we didn't ever get to do that. But
so Smokey knew all along. He's just messing with you guys.
Oh yeah. It was a mannequin that he had set up perfectly, completely dressed, like in jeans and shoes and socks and everything. And I mean, it looked perfect. I mean, there was no doubt. Because we walked up and we kind of hit it with a light, and we're like, oh shit. Yeah. And I didn't see him. He was just, which is not uncommon in those alleys, downtown. You get a drunk bum that just falls in the street or dies. And we roll around blacked out. What's that?
That's funny.
But that, I tell you, you freaked me out. And for years, I've always messed with Smokey about that.
He got you good.
It's been a good career.
That's funny. All right, John. Well, thanks for coming on and talking to us.
You betcha.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and stay frosty.